So just yesterday in the NBA community, we found out that John Wall and the Houston Rockets have agreed to find himself a new home. Basically meaning he will either get traded or bought out. Basically, he's leaving the Houston Rockets. This is pretty big news since John Wall is a guy who is not at his peak, but he did average over 20 points last year and 6 assists, so he's definitely a really good player. So that's led me to make this video where I'll be discussing 4 teams that I think John Wall could go to. Before we get into the video, I ask you to drop a like on this video as it does help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to help me reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers, also drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments, and play that intro. First team I want to talk about that John Wall could potentially go to is the Boston Celtics, and if I'm going to be honest, I probably think the Celtics won't trade for him just because John Wall actually has one of the biggest contracts in the league. He's making over $40 million a year. The Celtics is definitely not a team that has a lot of cap space. They literally couldn't do anything this offseason because of their lack of cap space, meaning they basically would have to exactly match John Wall's contract, and they don't have any disastrous contracts of their own beside Al Horford, but his contract is significantly smaller than Wall's. So basically, unless they're going to trade Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown, there's no great way to make the money work, and obviously they're not going to do that. So that just leads me to assume the only way the Celtics get John Wall is from a buyout, which is pretty realistic because it's going to be hard to trade Wall because of his huge contract. But I think Wall can be an absolutely amazing fit on the Boston Celtics, because right now at this current moment, the Celtics don't have a great point guard. Their starting point guard is Dennis Schroeder, who in my opinion is a pretty good player, but he's better as a backup point guard. He's a really good backup point guard, but he's a below average starting point guard in today's NBA with the amount of talented point guards. Whereas I think John Wall would be a way better player. And I think just on a team that's actually trying to win games and a team that is trying to go far in the playoffs, I think John Wall would do amazing and go full out. It was clear on Houston, he was just taking dumb shots. He wasn't actually playing to win basketball games. I think that's a misconception people get about him, but I think he would actually be creating plays for people and creating plays for himself, and I think that's what the Celtics need because their depth is not amazing. They're very top heavy, and why not just get better players at your top, especially when you're top heavy. I truly believe John Wall will go back to playing as good as he did in Washington, and I know that might sound like hopeful wishing, but you have to realize that after missing 2 years from one of the most devastating injuries a basketball player could get, he came back averaging 20 points and 6 assists on not great efficiency. But I think that efficiency was bad due to the fact that the Houston team was not talented. He had to force a lot of shots, but on the Celtics, he would be the third option. He would play in the flow of the offense, and he would be able to create plays for guys like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I just truly think this is the best destination for Wall. He definitely would be a starter. He definitely would know what his role is, and we would just be amazing for the Celtics to get him because I think he can go back to playing a top 10 point guard in the league, which would obviously make them a way better team. The next team I want to talk about John Wall potentially going to is the LA Clippers, and surprisingly with the Clippers, they could actually make a trade for John because they have multiple big contracts and overpaid players. I think the move they would probably make is sending Eric Bledsoe, Marcus Morris, and Luke Kennard to Houston, and then getting John Wall in return. And I think this move could also make them really great because right now on the roster, their point guard position is absolutely horrible, very, very weak. It's been pretty weak ever since Kawhi and Paul George joined, if we're being honest. Their point guards right now is Patrick Beverley and Eric Bledsoe. Although I said Eric Bledsoe might be in that potential trade, there's also a good chance John Wall just joins them if he gets bought out. So I'm just going to act like Bledsoe is still there. But nonetheless, those are 2 below average starting guards. They're not terrible NBA players as they could play a role, but they definitely shouldn't be starting for you if you actually want to try and win a championship, which I think the Clippers kind of want to do. And getting John Wall would just be amazing. He can create plays for others, create plays for himself. The Clippers' biggest problem has always been that they haven't had a great playmaker. They got Rajon Rondo, that didn't really work out, but John Wall will for sure be a great playmaker on this team. And I think without Kawhi, John Wall will be really needed. They're going to need him to step up, play at an elite level, hopefully go back to his old form. And maybe I'm having a bit too much confidence in John Wall's ability to be great again, but I don't care. That's my opinion. I truly think this trade will make them way better, since I don't think Eric Bledsoe is that good of an NBA player at this point. Marcus Morris is a pretty good role player, but I think John Wall is going to help them more. And Luke Kennard wasn't even playing that much for a lot of parts in the season, so I think they'll live without him. Overall, I think John Wall to the Clippers is the second best fit, and I also think it's the most realistic. The next team I want to discuss that could potentially get John Wall is the Philadelphia 76ers, and honestly, I think this is a pretty unrealistic move, but I do think there's a chance they could make sense, because we all know Philadelphia has been trying their absolute hardest to trade Ben Simmons, yet they couldn't get an offer that they liked. And what I was thinking was maybe they could trade Ben Simmons and Danny Green in return for John Wall, and then maybe Houston would throw in like DJ Augustine, Daniel House, R. David Nwaba. And you might be thinking this is a dumb trade. I understand that, but just hear me out. I know it's really risky, but at least from what we've seen, John Wall is actually one of the better playoff performers in the NBA, and right now Philadelphia doesn't need a point guard who is horrible in the playoffs. They need a player who can step up, and John Wall at his best is a guy who can make plays better than Ben Simmons. He could just put the ball in the basket better than Ben Simmons. He can finish as good as the rim as Ben Simmons. He's also an all-NBA level defender when he's at his best. He's not a defensive player of the year candidate like Ben Simmons, but he's no slouch on defense. And I honestly believe if John Wall goes to play on a team that's actually trying to win games, he will go back to playing at an elite level. People need to stop sleeping on him. I understand why you might not like this trade because it's kind of risky. What if Wall just goes back to averaging his inefficient 20 points per game? That's a worse player than Ben Simmons. That means you're going in the opposite direction. I understand that, but I'd rather have a guy who might not be as good in the regular season, but at least I know he's going to be above average point guard in the playoffs, which is when it really matters. And he might even be better than Ben Simmons in the regular season if he goes back to his old self. So the only reason I say this is unrealistic is because I think Philadelphia could probably get a better return than John Wall. But just in case they can't, I definitely think this is a move that could potentially happen and help them. The last and final team that I want to discuss John Wall potentially going to is the Dallas Mavericks. And I think if John Wall were to go to the Dallas Mavericks, he could actually get traded there, because I think the move would be like Kristaps Porzingis, Dwight Powell to the Rockets, and John Wall to the Mavericks. And I think this would be a move to help the Mavericks because it's pretty obvious they need another consistent player outside of Luka who could create plays and just put the ball in the basket. And Porzingis in his time in Dallas has just been very, very disappointing. I think it might be time for them to move on from him. And I think John Wall, as I've said countless times, is a guy who can get back to his old form. And I think he would just really help Luka Doncic out and make this team way better. I know there's a fit problem because John Wall can't shoot at a good level and he needs the ball in his hands. But I think it's kind of clear that the Mavericks need to just try something different because they literally been using the same roster the last 2 years and they haven't gotten out the first round. I'm not saying the way they managed Luka is terrible because we have guys like Anthony Davis who were managed terribly, Kevin Garnett, Kevin Love. But Luka Doncic is a guy who I think has potential to be the greatest player in NBA history. So they definitely have to start working to get him some more help. And I think there's a chance that adding John Wall could help them. And I think there's a realistic chance that they could get him. Getting Porzingis is probably better than any player that the Rockets could get in return for John Wall. And they don't even have like an amazing power forward right now. So I think this is a trade that could happen if the Mavericks wanted it to. To conclude the video, I actually think John Wall is a very important player right now. He can help out a lot of teams. A lot of people are sleeping on him. They're forgetting he had a pretty good year last year coming off of a terrible injury. I'm definitely not sleeping on John Wall. I think the most realistic team he's going to go to is the Clippers. I think the team he should go to because of the fit is the Boston Celtics. But regardless, I'd like to see him go to the Boston Celtics. I'm not going to lie. I don't want any Western Conference teams try to compete with the Lakers. But nonetheless, I'm kind of excited to see where John Wall goes because I think it will greatly impact the NBA. Anyways, guys, that's it for the video. Let me know where you think John Wall will go. Drop a like on this video to help my channel grow. Subscribe to my channel if you want daily NBA content. Also, if you want to help me reach my goal of 1,500 subscribers. Also, drop a comment on this video as I do respond to all of my comments. And I'm out.